So, what do you do if you have a website that is over 10 years old and has 5,000 blog posts and the traffic has been declining? Well, that's the question that we're going to answer here in today's podcast. I brought on a guest. His name is Tom Drake, and he is the founder of maplemoney.com. And he is also now a partner at getrichslowly.org. And both of these sites are quite old and they've been through a lot. Maple Money went through the Penguin updates and actually got a manual link penalty back in 2012. But Tom stuck with the site. He continued to work on it, build it, and it went from a very low in 2012 and 2013 to a peak in more recent years. And so we dive into some of the content audit strategies that he has and what he's been working on there. But we also jump into how he's involved with Get Rich Slowly. This is a site that if you've been in the personal finance space at all, you've heard of. It was started by JD Roth back in 2006. But Tom came on as a partner a couple of years ago. It's a long story that I will let Tom tell here in the podcast because it's quite interesting. But a site that had over 5,000 posts, a lot of them now irrelevant or just thin content, that Tom has the task of auditing, deleting, removing, improving the internal links, and overall trying to improve the SEO value of the site overall. And so we jump into some of his processes, specifically what he's working on to remove old content and update old content and just improve sites in general. So it's super interesting stories that I think you'll enjoy, but also great tips that he shares that hopefully you can implement into your own sites. So with that, here's Tom. Hey, Tom, welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast.
Hey, Spencer, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it is great to connect. We've only connected just in the last few weeks, actually. I think originally you reached out regarding Link Whisper, and then we chatted a little bit about what you're working on right now, and actually found out we know a couple of the same people and got to do a little mastermind call just last week, which was great. And so I wanted to introduce you to the Niche Pursuits audience. And so for people that don't know who you are and what you're working on, why don't you just give us a brief introduction?
So I've basically always been in the personal finance niche for over a decade. My main site is maplemoney.com, and I also do a podcast, The Maple Money Show. And then I found myself more and more liking sort of the SEO and the affiliate monetization side. So I started partnering with people, originally Jimmy at retirehappy.ca, and more recently JD Roth at Get Rich Slowly, where I kind of stay mostly behind the curtain a bit and just try to get some extra traffic for the sites, monetize them better.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into that, both Maple Money and Get Rich Slowly, what you're doing there. But before you were building websites, what were you doing with yourself?
Before I was building websites,
Yeah.
I always dabbled around online a bit. Before all this, I was trying so many random things. Little tiny exact match domains, trying to sell private label ebooks on or private label rights ebooks on things like eBay or on these sites, and nothing ever really worked. I was looking back and it was pretty much 1999 to 2009, a full 10 years of just kind of trying things out and nothing really working. And the funny thing was, where I am now, when I started my blog, back then blogs weren't something that were very well known to make money. So I really kind of started it more as a hobby where I was trying to make money on these other things for 10 years. And the hobby ended up turning out to be the better thing.
So what year did you start Maple Money?
So I started that in 2009. Being personal finance, the reason I started that was I had just recently gotten married. We were looking for a house. We had a kid on the way. So all this kind of happened in 1 year and made me sort of realize that my finances were rather important to kind of get under control. I didn't feel like I was sort of being mature enough with some of my decisions. So I started reading different blogs and kind of getting into this whole world, and then realizing I could do my own thing, my own slightly different take on the topic.
Yeah, it's interesting because the first site I actually ever started was a personal finance site. I went to school for finance, and I started a site in 2006. And that's how I made my first dollar online, really, other than selling stuff on eBay, I guess. But I didn't stick with it. Like, I had no idea how to get traffic. I didn't know what I was doing. I threw up a few articles, then I'd scratch my head and wonder why, traffic wasn't coming. And that was sort of the beginning of my journey, right? Is I built the site and just didn't have the hustle to stick with it. Like, the site was there for a few years, and I sort of cut my teeth on that site, but it wasn't until a few years later where I began to understand SEO and keyword research and all those things that are, helping me out now.
I didn't realize that. That's really interesting. And being back in 2006, unfortunately, you had a huge head start that you could have probably went somewhere with that over time.
I agree. If I had stuck with it, if I had really just blogged, right, and been consistent and connected, I'm sure I could have grown it, tremendously, right? Potentially.
Yes.
But so going back to Maple Money, it's something that you've had now for about 11 years. How long has it been full-time for you? How long have you, was Maple Money what allowed you originally to be able to kind of be full-time online?
Yeah, it's so originally it started off as Canadian Finance Blog, which is a pretty brutal name, but it got the point across. It's so starting that in 2009. I like to think that it kind of grew slow, but also quick. It like a lot of blog stories, it took 6 months to kind of make that first Google AdSense payment, and once I made that, though, everything kind of took off from there. Like, I kept reinvesting the money into the site, and things continued to grow. So I would literally reinvest every dollar. So I was buying other sites. I was hiring staff writers, just trying to find all the ways to grow. So, well, it felt slow those first 6 months. In looking back at it, it was probably a year and a half in, and I was sort of one of the top sites in Canadian personal finance at the time, and continued to go from there.
So how big has the site gotten? Are you willing to share sort of traffic stats in terms of either traffic or any other sort of success statistics for the site? How well is it doing now?
Well, this year hasn't been that great, but to look at it overall, there's been some ups and downs. So in back in 2010, 2011, things were really firing, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but it was definitely the hundreds of thousands of page views a month.
Okay.
And but then in maybe early 2012, I got hit with a manual penalty for all sorts of scammy links I was building. And this was before Penguin, just a little bit. There was a big manual push that kind of came before Penguin.
Okay.
And then I also got hit by Penguin on top of that.
Ouch.
And so 2012 to 2014 were kind of lower. And again, I don't have the stats with me right now, but I remember that time where I had to reach out, try to get some of these links removed. Thankfully, a lot of these services I was using, once Penguin came, a lot of those sites closed down. Just different article sites you could spin stuff to and post things to, all the junk, and a lot of them closed down. So I was able to get a lot of links removed via that. And then the disavow tool came out, so I disavowed some stuff. So, but by 2015, things picked back up again. And then in 2017 is when I rebranded to Maple Money.
Okay.
Canadian Finance Blog was such a terrible name that even bloggers that knew me well couldn't get it right. They'd be like, "Oh, this is Tom from Canadian Personal Finance. This is Tom from the Canadian Finance Blog," and like no one could get it right. And so I made the investment into getting the Maple Money domain because it still kind of represented Canadian and finance,
Right.
but with a much better brand. And
I agree.
so we did that in 2017. And the traffic went down with the domain change for about 6 months, and I was concerned during that, but I just kept pushing forward. It's like I'd made so much of a rebrand with this, a whole new site design, everything, so many requests to people to change the links. I didn't want to just trust redirects. So I was pretty locked in with it, and so I continued with it. Then in 2018, 2019. Those were my two best years. Definitely in the mid hundreds of thousands of page views a month. And all this time, most of this is search traffic. I've never done great on social media. I'm not great with my email newsletter. So it's search traffic's been a large part of it throughout.
So that's super interesting because I know I was building sites back in the 2012, Panda Penguin days, and people were crushed. And I was a lot of my sites were these really small niche sites that were 1 page, 5 page, 10 page. And so when they got crushed, I didn't work on them anymore. I started something new. But you actually stuck with it with your main site, and you were able to recover. I mean, you were able to get old links removed and kind of build the site. Walk us through that a little bit more beyond just getting rid of spammy links. Like, what do you feel like allowed you to kind of get back on the good side of Google after being manually penalized, Penguin penalized, and everything like that?
I think just that persistence. I didn't know what else to do. I had that one site, so I was going to push forward with it. You were dabbling with different things, so you were able to say, okay, that one's a loss and move on. Even when traffic was down, it wasn't terrible. Even if I lost, I'm slightly guessing here, but say I lost like half the traffic, there was still decent traffic there, and doing all this, it was kind of unfortunate at the time. It felt like I was doing all this work to undo what we had done originally.
Right.
But in a way, looking back at it, I actually think it still helped me get where I am now. It kind of built up my site, built up my brand. It kept things going. I was still getting press mentions and bloggers linking to me. Like I still had a sort of a presence in the niche, even though the traffic was down. Real people don't care about that.
Right.
What your search traffic is.
Yep.
So I wouldn't suggest even back then that people build all these terrible links. But in a way, I think it helped me a lot. Still to build the site. But if I could go back and do it again, instead of kind of taking this easy way of having a VA and do all these links, but it was working back then. So it did get me to where I was. But I would have been doing what's recommended more now, reaching out to more bloggers, getting more legit links. Some of these blogs are now closed, but still online. Like these are links I could have had throughout the decade and built that up. But when it came to cleaning up the links, it was a lot of work, reaching out to blogs that you never talked to in the first place because they were on services that would allow you to post straight to them.
Right.
So it's like I didn't even have a contact to get that link in the first place, and now I've got to contact them and see if I can get that link removed or that post removed. And I think just waiting it out was, in the end, probably the biggest thing I did, for two reasons. One, the manual penalty expired. It wasn't that at one point I did put it in for review and they rejected the review. But eventually it just expired. And then on the Penguin side, of course, they're just doing their updates as they go. And like I said, a lot of these sites shut down. They only existed almost like a sort of a private blog network before that was a thing. It was more as a service, and they have all these sites. And so just kind of sticking through it, eventually it kind of cleaned up most of itself. Like I did get some links removed. I definitely disavowed some once that became a thing. The disavow tool was not available when Penguin first came. And so I put in work, but I think waiting it out was actually sort of 2 times the bigger thing.
So kind of catch people up to today. You said kind of 2018, 2019 were maybe the peak, and traffic's come down a little bit since then. And it's a roller coaster, right? Like I actually just looked at your Ahrefs stats, which is great. And from what I can see, it looks like the latest Google update has been good for you, I think. It looked like there's a curve back up. So you've kind of come down from a peak and maybe starting to head back up. Kind of what are you working on and what's the latest?
So one of the things I've done over the last couple of years is start treating it more like a business. I went too many years still with that hobby blogger mentality, even when things were going really well. And you might have some staff writers, but in general, you're doing all the things. So now I use Design Pickle to create all our images. I have a full-time VA in the Philippines to kind of handle sort of the blog management, getting staff writer posts into the WordPress and add those images and all that. Mm-hmm. I do have the staff writers. I have an editor now that makes sure all the posts are both grammatically and factually accurate. So putting this process into place has helped a lot, and it's taken a lot off my plate, which has allowed me to focus more on mostly the SEO again. It's where I have a strength, and I just didn't have enough time. So now we're looking at things like putting more effort into keyword research. I do a lot of content gap analysis, just seeing where there's topics that we're not covering and we should be. And then the other thing that I think has helped a lot is internal linking. Using Link Whisper, I've been using it like crazy lately, and I did have that increase on the latest Google update. Throughout this year, I think I had decreases on every Google update. It kept going down on top of COVID having its own effect on traffic.
Right.
Google was not helping me, and I think internal linking helped a lot. There's probably a year that's gone by lately where we were putting out lots of new content. It's all very keyword researched, but we weren't making our own internal links to it. Like we weren't going back. And so now part of our process is when a new post goes live, go back and find at least 3 internal links. And we use Link Whisper for that, because we can just kind of search, because we know the keyword we're trying to rank for. That there's no Google Search Console data yet on that. So if it's literally a brand new post, the best thing we have to go on is what is it this post is trying to rank for in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for using Link Whisper, by the way. Appreciate it. So was your process previously, and still is it your process as far as new content? So you do great keyword research, you publish a great article, you do some internal linking. Do you do anything else? Any sort of promotion of your content outside of that?
Do you mean social media and such?
Either social media or external link building, or just anything else.
This is where I'm still working on this a bit. Social media is something that I've always kind of keep trying and keep putting on the back burner a bit, just because it it hasn't been working as well as just straight SEO. It's back on the table again for the next year, where we're going to look at getting out there more on Twitter, Facebook, everything, and just try to build up some awareness there. When it comes to actual link building, it's another spot where I haven't put a ton of direct focus into. I've been more on page. It's something I've been looking at more and more. Just being around the niche long enough, I feel like I could probably, if I had the free time, I could probably go and guest post more places.
Right.
Maybe even just request links, like the usual, if there's a resource page or something like that. But most of my links lately, not back when I was getting my penguin penalties, but I've been really shy about link building because of what happened before. Now, lately, Penguin has changed a bit in that it's no longer a penalty so much. Like it doesn't take your whole site down.
Right.
It's
it just
more
devalues the link or ignoring it. Right.
So that makes me feel a little safer in being able to reach out to people and get links, where I was pretty shy about the idea of any kind of link building for years after my penguin issues. So, but yeah, nowadays it's definitely something we're looking at more and more, is going out and requesting links. I'm sure guest posting is going to be the most likely way of doing that, because it's just a better value proposition for everyone. Like they're getting real content. One thing I'm looking at doing is something I don't see a lot of people do when they guest post, is actually write something that can rank on that site. I see so many people write guest posts, and it's like a real generic, like 5 ways to do this, and it's kind of shallow and it's kind of self-serving. They're just trying to get their link. Like they'll be like 5 ways, and whatever that topic is, it's like exactly what they want their for their own link.
Exactly.
So I've had enough success with this sort of content gap theory of finding what a blog isn't ranking for. I want to do that guest posting, reach out to a blog, and I can literally say then that I see you don't have a post on this topic. I want to write one that's going to rank. And then it really feels like a win-win. The only small risk, if you don't know the person well enough, is that once it starts ranking, maybe they change your authorship and rewrite the post or anything like that, right? But in general, I think it's a great idea. Even more so if you're a product, because then you're not sort of playing this blog traffic game. If you're a product, maybe Link Whisper, you could write about topics, and if you get 10 guest posts ranking on the front page for that topic, and they all mention Link Whisper, like beyond SEO, you're just sort of using blogs that might be bigger to build up your own brand. People are going to see it on other blogs, and it doesn't have to be your own blog that ranks for that topic.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And a couple of times, I haven't done this in outreach, but I get inbound requests. And a couple of times I said, look, it's usually people that I kind of know in the industry. And I kind of say, look, I'll let you do a guest post if you find a great keyword that you think I can rank for, and you write that for me. And so I think it is a win-win. I think there's an opportunity there. If you come in and just outreach to somebody, they know that you're trying to get a link eventually, right? But if you can provide some sort of value, like I'm going to provide you a great piece of content that ranks in Google and hopefully get you traffic long-term, it should be a win-win.
Well, and I should say, when I was guest posting before, say 2012, even later, or more recent, I mean, I was part of that same problem where guest posts were like 500 words and not very deep. Now we're in this new era where everybody's auditing their sites, and they're looking to get rid of that sort of thin, panda unfriendly junk. And if it's not ranking for anything, they're going to want to get rid of it. And I've seen guest posts I've written disappear. And so I think if you focus more on actually providing something that's got staying power, especially if it's someone that's going to be auditing their site like that, uh, you might actually last through those
That's a good
audits.
point.
And like you said, I'm very similar with if someone comes to me for a guest post, it's very few people that'll get in there, but I look at it exactly like you do. I if someone's going to guest post for me, I want them to do it almost like they were a staff writer. Like
Right.
we have certain word counts. We have a certain way we want to target topics. So guest posting is possible, but it's not going to be a self-serving thing, because I've been doing so many audits. I don't want to look at a new post and think I'm just going to have to delete that in a year.
Right.
That's how I look at posts now. Even through this COVID stuff, I've been trying to avoid the topic somewhat, because it's something that I just look at like a year from now. This content isn't going to exist.
It's not going to help me out. Yeah. So let's dive into content audits a little bit here. Site audits, content audits. That's what we talked a little bit about over email. And so I want to dive into what you're doing. You've got Maple Money that's been around for 11 years, something like that now. Yeah. And it really is interesting to me because I've been doing a lot of auditing on nichepursuits.com. I deleted something like 200 posts that were old income reports, old personal updates, just thin content that wasn't really evergreen. I've been going through and doing that. And so why don't you walk us through what you've been doing for content auditing on Maple Money?
So with Maple Money, I've been constantly auditing. 1 to 2 times a year, I'll take a fresh look at it. My process is I use I believe it's WP All Export, or I think I have the name right of the plugin. And what it does is it exports the database, really, so you can see all the URLs, you can see the date, the author, anything you want. You can get into in any field of the database if you dig down through. Like I was actually even pulling Link Whisper, the sort of the inbound, the outbound, and the externals. I was pulling those as 3 columns.
Okay.
And then pulling rank math information, so I can pull the field that says what our primary keyword is. But so what that does is it gives me a really good Excel file to work from. And then I also, I'm an Excel nerd, so it's may not be simple for everyone, but I also export keyword information from Hrefs and link information. And it's one other source I'm forgetting. Can't remember what it was. There's one other thing I bring in, but
then you merge it all into, you're able to match up the URL with the Ahrefs and
yeah, exactly. You can bring it all in with VLOOKUPs, and basically what I get is all the information. And with that, I then just start going through it and looking for things. Basically, I'm looking for, I know what the other thing I bring in. It's traffic numbers from Google Analytics. I bring in 1 year of traffic. Okay. So I look at all this and just start to look for things that are problems. If you could filter it and see what posts get almost no traffic, and you can a little more confidently feel like those can be deleted. It's not always that simple.
Right.
What I like to do is still give it a chance. If I look and it's the only post on a topic, then there's a couple options. Maybe it's the only post on a topic, but it is like 300 to 500 words and needs to be rewritten. I'll mark it as a rewrite. If it's a post on a certain topic, and it's a nice complete post and doesn't really need to be rewritten, then it's more about looking at, what's the keyword? Like for some reason it's not ranking for whatever it's about. Mm-hmm. But certainly by filtering on that lower amount, the lower, say, half even of traffic, you can kind of know that you're not going to cut anything off that's too important. I've looked at a lot of sites and I often find that 90% of the posts only bring 10% of the traffic, and the other way around, 10% of the posts bring 90%. Now, you don't want to be as quick to judge as just saying, well, I can delete like 90% of my posts and then everything's going to be fine, because there's a lot there that can be improved upon. So it is a post by post decision, but sometimes when you're looking at it, it just really jumps out at you that this post doesn't need to exist. Maybe it's about a product that no longer exists. Then even if it's getting some traffic, you have to consider maybe you turn that into an alternatives post. It's like this post doesn't exist, or this product doesn't exist, but now
here's some other
spin it around into to kind of hear some alternatives to this product that no longer exists. But if it doesn't exist and it's getting no traffic, it's a pretty easy delete and redirect to whatever the hot new thing is.
So what if that article is getting no traffic, it's not very relevant, but it's got great backlinks?
Well, I don't look at the backlinks too much, in that I always redirect when I delete. So if it has great backlinks, it's going to go somewhere else.
Okay.
There is a few cases though that I do consider that. We're doing the Get Rich Slowly, which we can get into in a bit. But one time where I do look at the backlinks is if a post gets no traffic, isn't really even on topic, possibly. It could be something kind of random. But if it has good backlinks and it doesn't have something that could be reasonably redirected, I may keep the post. An example that comes to mind, I think it was some post about like dealing with dandruff or something like that on Get Rich Slowly. And by any content view, you would say this post doesn't need to exist. But when you start looking at the backlinks, I know there was a link from Lifehacker and a few other ones that it's like, okay, maybe we'll keep this post. And I know someone else that did the opposite. They saw one of their friends link to something and on someone else's site and said, well, why didn't you give me the link? And the person said to them that, oh, well, you don't have a post on this topic. So the guy quickly wrote the post that same day and said, okay, now I have a post, and he linked to it. And it was a topic that wouldn't normally have been as great of a fit on his site.
Right.
But he literally wrote the post because he knew he could
get the link. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's what he did, like within a 1 day span. But I'm looking at it with old archived content, but it's still kind of the same decision. It's like if you want to keep that link in a relevant way, that post probably has to remain. I don't have anything that I could feel accurate enough about redirecting this dandruff link to something else. So, sometimes some posts may remain. We're still in the process of this right now, but some posts may remain just because of the links that they've received.
So I do want to kind of bring Get Rich Slowly into the discussion here, and we'll just keep talking about, I think, content audits here. But explain how you got involved in Get Rich Slowly, because that's a personal finance blog that's been around since, like, I don't know, 2000. You tell me. Many years.
I don't want to tell you because it's 2006, which is when you started your site.
I know. I should. I probably tried to connect with him back in 2006, and I just, anyways. But yeah, how did you get involved in Get Rich Slowly, and why? And then we'll talk a little bit more what you're doing there.
So it's kind of a long path to that. In that I met JD Roth, who owned Get Rich Slowly. I met him online, and then we met at a conference called FinCon. We both had been to every one, so every year it felt like this annual reunion. And it was kind of funny because he was very anti SEO back in 2011, 2012, and I actually had some rather heated debates stating how SEO is still about helping people. Because he saw it as you can either help readers or you can write for search engines. And even though he had a ton of traffic, I pointed out, if you don't have SEO, you're not reaching even more people.
Right.
So if you really want to help people, they have to find you. So we kind of debated this for a couple years when he was at Get Rich Slowly. And then at one point he sold it to a large lead generation site. And it went a few years, and looking at it now, this is probably what a lot of big corporations do when they buy sites. They kind of just ring it out for ROI, return on investment. In a way, they don't need to care about what's the site going to be like in 5 years, 10 years. It's, we paid this much for it. Can we make that and more? And just in that corporate structure, I think you get a lot of maybe employees that just don't care as much. Like I could almost, looking at it now that I'm in the site, I could almost see like some decisions made, like some random low level corporate employee had to build 100 internal links to this one post, and the strange ways they did it just so they could get off on time and go hit happy hour.
Right.
There'd be like there were a lot of links to like a savings account post, and some of the links they went to insert links have been interesting. Things like a post about saving money on a side of beef, and then there'll be this throwaway line, and now that you've saved money on that beef, you can go get a high interest savings account, and it would link that way, and it cheapens so much of the content. And throughout that time, the site kept declining. And they had staff writers writing about all sorts of topics that were getting very repetitive. I think there was at least a dozen posts about how to start an emergency fund. So the site just got big, and having that many employees, like I said, if you're just some low level employee doing your job, it's not the same kind of care and attention. So eventually, JD got the opportunity to buy the site back. They weren't seeing enough out of the site, I assume, to at that point to continue with their big corporate structure and having to employ staff on a site that's only making so much. So he was able to buy it back, and it took him less than a year to get around to me, because over that time he was realizing that blogging had changed a lot. It wasn't that one man show anymore. It became like, oh, I need someone. He hired someone to do social media, and he hired someone to help with the blog a bit, and nothing was really catching. So just knowing him over a decade, I was kind of giving him some advice, and it's funny, what really led to our partnership was me just helping him with double tracking of Google Analytics. He had the code twice, and
oh wow,
he asked that question, and as soon as I saw the kind of double page views, zero bounce rate, I'd seen it before where it's just the analytics is installed twice, and I helped him through that, and somehow that turned into a conversation of, well, maybe we should just work on this. And again, credit goes back to Jimmy at Retire Happy, because he kind of came up with this model for me of, well, why don't you just come on board? We'll kind of split the revenue, and you do your thing, I'll do my thing. So he started that with me. Jim did back in 2010. And so JD knew all this, so he knew this is something I've done. And so it just became exactly that. Like, why don't you come on and look at this site and figure things out? And when I got in there to help him with the analytics, I was also pointing out all sorts of other strange things. The company that owned it had moved, at least 1,000 or 2,000 posts into private, and killed all the links.
Oh wow.
No redirects or anything. So I knew there was a lot of work there to go through. And that's when all the auditing began.
So at its peak, how many articles did Get Rich Slowly have?
So I took all those private posts and I made them public, just because I wanted to see where we're at, see if a lot of the private posts deserved to be deleted, but I needed to see, like, if we turn all these on, will some of them start getting traffic? So when they all went public, we had about 5,000 posts on the site. That's a lot of
It's a
posts.
huge site. Yeah.
And back in 2006 to 2010, even it was really common to write like a 300 word post, but maybe you do 2 or 3 a day, even whenever a random thought comes to your head, or you notice someone else wrote a blog and you almost want to do commentary on another blog post
Right.
from another site. So it was very common that it almost became this pre-social media. It was kind of this feed of uh, multiple posts a day, whatever you're interested in covering. So we quickly went from 5,000 posts to 2,500 posts, and the way we did that was again, just that same audit kind of process I have, but some of the choices were a lot easier. First of all, they weren't my babies. I didn't have any attachment to them. So I was able
It was
to look
easier
at
to
it.
kill it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was easier to be a little more factual with it. You can look at the numbers, you can make your decisions. I was still hesitant to touch a lot of JD's stuff. It was more the staff writers, or if it was some old things from that JD might have written in 2006, where it seemed very common back then that you would comment on another blog post. You see someone else write a blog post, you would write your own rebuttal or agreement to that, and 2/3 of the post might actually be quoting the other blog post. So there were easy decisions there to delete, where like more than half of the content wasn't actually even new content. And
Right.
then back in early blogging as well, things like roundups and blog carnivals and all this stuff was very common. It was again kind of a pre-social media way of how you reached out to different people and shared their content. So a lot of these decisions were pretty easy. I could search by URLs, like I was searching for the word carnival or roundup, and all of those instant deletes. With those, I redirected those to the front page, just because they were general enough. And I did it in single redirects. Again, you can make your redirect be carnival or roundup, so you don't have to create a redirect line for every single post you delete. You can take some shortcuts.
Right.
But so there were a lot of quick wins like that, and then the emergency fund post as an example. You just start finding those. You filter your spreadsheet by emergency, and you can find them all, see which one actually ranks or get some form of traffic, and kind of make it the main one. And then I look at the other ones when it comes to merging and see what do they cover that the important post covers. So assuming you have one winner and nine that just aren't going anywhere, I just see if those 9 have anything in them that could be added to the main one, so that it's an even better post, an even bigger post. It goes a little deeper, and then delete those 9 and redirect them to that. And so it's a very slow post, or slow process to go through these literally post by post and sort that all out. Now that left us at 2,500 posts, but we're still looking to go further, and there's some steps we've taken this year to figure this all out.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there's some things that you can do to speed up the process, some of those shortcuts, but at the end of the day, you probably, everything that's left, which could be the bulk of it, you do have to go one by one and just kind of look at the post. And so it's an extremely long process that you've been working on for how long now?
Let's see. I started with JD in late 2018, so it's been 2 years with Get Rich Slowly of this, but it felt like we got again, this is 2020 for you, but we got a little stuck where we couldn't find the next source of progress. So the next step we took is I hit a point where I didn't want to delete JD's stories. If it was something he wrote that was personal, maybe not related to the site, I still felt like I I didn't want to be the one to make that decision. So what we've done now is, with the remaining 2,500 posts, is JD, as the guy in charge of content, went through them all, and he reviewed them all strictly on the quality of the content. He didn't even want to see traffic numbers. I'm layering that on afterwards. So he went through all the content, sometimes just 30-second quick views, and he did something similar where he'd market rewrite, market delete, but he was just making decisions truly on the content. A lot of it is still his. Off the top of my head, I think half of those 2,500 posts are his authorship now. So a lot of the staff stuff is gone. But by doing it this way, he was able to make some different decisions. And what we're looking at now is that we may have 1,000 posts remaining. We don't right now. 2,500 is still live, because what I'm going to do next is layer those numbers back in and see where we lie. If he thinks a certain post needs to be deleted, but it's one of our top 50 posts, then we're going to skip that one. But
Right.
well, he was able to make these decisions, and likely I would like to be down to 1,000 posts, but I will take that one more look at just where do we line up on certain things, on what should go or not. I really like the idea of being down to 1,000 posts, but it's not about post count, because at the same time, I have 1,000 more post ideas. so we could build the site back up now. Once we get cleaned down to what we need, we can build it back up and actually reach people with different topics.
So you've whittled it down a ton, obviously, and you've marked some as rewrite. Have you started those rewrites and those content updates?
Yeah, JD has started some of this, where he now has a spreadsheet where he can see these posts he wants to potentially merge or rewrite. So some of the content he's working on is exactly that. Where we can bring that URL from the past into now and reschedule it for that day. A lot of times he's putting so much effort into it that it's really a new post from scratch, because maybe that rewrite post was a staff writer, and it was, again, kind of shallow and everything. So it's like, it's a good topic seed. We're going to keep this URL, we're going to keep these links, but we're going to do a whole new post, new title, everything. So it's a process. That side of it will probably take at least 2 years.
Wow.
Because there's only so often JD can write himself. We're looking at bringing staff writers in, but even they will more likely be working on the new content that's more SEO focused. But so it's a very slow process to get this done. Even with the new content, I literally have about 1,000 ideas, and even if we wrote Monday to Friday, well, that's only 260 posts a year. So even my content ideas could go 4 years. Yeah. So it is a slow process, but I think of the 1,500 posts that we're looking at removing or merging, as much as 1,000, I believe it was, were marked as delete. Now, again, certain ones will have traffic or links, like we talked about with the dandruff post.
Right.
So maybe we don't delete 1,000 posts, but it'll be as many as possible, and that can happen immediately. Once I'm going to have to kind of go through each one too and make those same kind of decisions, but we will get rid of a lot quickly.
Yeah. So it's a ton of cleanup. Have you noticed any SEO benefits? What's sort of the results so far that you've seen as you've started to clean up the site?
So it's been a bit of a roller coaster. When I first came on and I deleted those first 2,500, redirected all that, we did get a pickup in SEO.
Okay.
But Get Rich Slowly went the same way as Maple Money this year, where Google updates just didn't seem to like us. And I don't take it too personally, because I've talked to a lot of other bloggers in the niche, and it seemed like a lot of the updates this year were kind of at least in personal finance, I can't say for other niches, but they seemed a little big brand focused when Forbes starts ranking for everything and sites like that. So I'm hoping that this most recent update in December, I'm hoping that's gone a little bit back towards bloggers again and giving them a chance under some of these big brands. I think I think one of the bigger things I've seen has been this internal linking. It, especially with Get Rich Slowly, like when I say that they made a good chunk of the site private, with that they destroyed all the internal links. So so even though I took these posts and made them public again, they have no internal links. So some of them are going to get deleted, even though maybe they would have had a chance with internal links. But we need to make those decisions to delete. And I can't wait too long to, let's make some internal links and see where that goes. But that said, I have been using Link Whisper a lot to do these internal links, because I know that there's obvious benefit there. The DR of the site is 73, and if you treat your internal links the same as you do inbound links, one of the best links we can give ourselves is an internal link. It's right there waiting for us. So I've been doing a lot of internal linking, even though I know some of those posts that are sending those internal links will be gone soon, but then we'll forward the links. So it all works out in the end anyways. But I've been focusing on posts that are ranking for topics. So likely the internal links I'm building to the post, the post receiving the links will continue to exist on the site. I just might lose some of those internal links. But when I was using Link Whisper, it wasn't that big of a deal. If I built 10 internal links and 5 of those posts end up being deleted in the future, okay. It didn't take me a lot of time to make that link. So once it redirects, it's kind of the same effect anyways.
Yeah. And what I've done, and maybe you've done the same thing, is when I'm sort of auditing internal links, yes, I'm building some new ones, but I'm also removing a lot of old ones sometimes, because as I go through, especially when I'm like actually editing an article, I'll find that there's a lot of sort of keyword rich internal links pointing to articles that I really don't want to rank for that keyword that it's originally linking, the anchor text it's using. I want another post to be ranking for that particular phrase. So I do a lot of changing or deleting of internal links, just because back when I first started, I would link to anything, as much as I could. Now I'm much more focused on, okay, I want to rank for keyword A for this post, so I'm gonna, only link to it that. I won't link to another post with that same keyword phrase somewhere else. So are you kind of doing something similar?
I haven't done that as much. If we're rewriting a post, republishing a post, then yeah, everything's sort of up for grabs. But I haven't really gone through and just reviewed posts for what kind of internal links they have. And it's a great idea, because I, as you were saying that, I was thinking of some of the ways I would link. In Canada, an RRSP is very similar to a 401k in the US. And I may have linked to older posts with just the term RSP, but I didn't go a little wider with that. And maybe I want a certain post to rank for spousal RSP and another post to rank for investing in an RSP. Like there's, if I was just using the very short term, I probably have multiple posts that are just kind of getting that one word link.
Right. Yeah. And like a perfect example on my site is, like, I talk a lot about niche sites, and I do have one sort of monster post that I want to rank for the phrase niche websites, or how to build a niche website. But throughout my site, the phrase niche site is used a lot, and I'm probably linking to a dozen different posts, when really the only post I want to rank for the phrase niche site in Google is that one pillar post. And so as I edit, anytime I'm linking the phrase niche site to something else, I change that or remove it just to make it very clean and clear to Google what I'm trying to rank for.
Yeah, I definitely like this idea. I will be, you've just added another thing to my to-do list.
You're welcome. Um, very good though. Like I'm fascinated by the content audit strategy and the content audit process because we're in an interesting time of sort of websites, right? 10 years ago, people didn't really need to audit their websites really because it wasn't a thing. Like all websites really were pretty new, right? And so now that sites are getting to be 10, 15, or 20 years old, there's a lot of upkeep and maintenance. And I think this is going to be a much, much more common topic and problem and process that people follow in the coming years for sure.
Yeah, there was a point where, like I said, blogs posting 2-3 times a day, it really was this, whoever publishes the most content wins. You didn't need a huge SEO strategy. You could kind of just write about anything, and Google would rank it if you're a big enough site with your thousands of posts. And yeah, now I just want it as tight as possible. And again, like we're looking at all sorts of new posts for all the sites too. So it's not just about getting the number down, but any post that exists should have a purpose of some sort, and not be something that's outdated or completely irrelevant. So I do look at a purpose now. Like it needs to either be able to rank for something, or maybe its only purpose is to attract links. That's fine too. But one thing I've mentioned to you before in our own conversations is I find my podcast as a the SEO side of it. It attracts links. My podcast gets links at least twice as much as the blog posts. So again, with internal linking, I need to look more at seeing where these podcast show notes pages can link out to blog posts that matter more to me from an SEO standpoint.
Right.
And then the podcast does have its own outreach benefit. It just in another place people can find you, kind of like the social media that I keep struggling with. But the podcast has worked where people are now finding me on the Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and that brings new people in.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom, for coming on the Niche Pursuits podcast. Are there any final either SEO tips, content update strategies, or just any final thoughts that you'd like to leave listeners with here today?
Yeah, I think the biggest tip is that you have to get started when it comes to these audits, and you have to be willing to cut. Like I said, how Maple Money was something that I've had my own issues with removing some content. It's like I don't want to give up on it. I paid a staff writer. I used my own time, and it gets hard to kind of kill your darlings like that. So I find sometimes it's just uh, uh, something mental that day. Like you got to find that one day where you're feeling a little more aggressive, and you're willing to say like delete. Where another day you might sit down and be like, oh, I really want to keep that. So you just kind of got to go with that momentum. I think putting it into Excel is a huge help, because then you can look at that bottom 50% or whatever your metric is, and just feel a little more aggressively in control. Because I think the more I look at sites, you could almost delete 50% of a lot of sites, and you'd end up with a more focused site. One thing we didn't talk about was kind of this. I hate the term, but it's this concept of link juice. You've got a certain DR power of your site, and I often picture it like you see those pictures where you've got the champagne glasses all stacked up in a pyramid, and you pour into the top and it filters down to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
If using Get Rich Slowly as an example, if you have 5,000 posts, you're spreading all that power around to these 5,000 posts that have nothing for Google. The Google can't tell what this post is about. The more you bring that down, say we end up 1,000 posts. Now you're only spreading it to 1,000 posts, and you can be a little more purposeful with that internal linking and everything to really tell Google, this is what this site is about. These pages matter, rank them. And so
Yep.
That's the real benefit of all this audit stuff is to get it focused enough that Google understands it better. These pages actually have a purpose, and spread that sort of Google crawl and that link juice and all these things around to fewer posts. So it's fully understood.
So if people want to follow along with you or listen to your podcast, where should they go?
Best place is maplemoney.com. The podcast is on there too. You can find me on Get Rich Slowly and Retire Happy. I even though I'm mostly behind the scenes, I will occasionally contribute a post. Not many, but you can find me there as well.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on.